All right, and so just those of you who may have just joined us, just again to let you know, we are recording this for future reference. So again, we appreciate everyone being here and grateful for Brother and Sister Mitchell being our directors. And I will now turn the time over to them and Brother Billings and Sister Bullwinkle.
Very good. Thank you so much. Just another sound check. Can you hear us all right? Thumbs up. Okay. We're so happy to be here tonight and to be able to talk with you about our stake trek for 2022. There's been a lot of action going on for about the last 6 months. And as questions have come up, it's been, a kind of a challenge to try to reach out to everybody. So I thought, well, let's just hold a kind of a fireside, kind of a, not super formal, but let's make sure we get everybody's questions answered as we go through this. So let's just jump in. So tonight, what are we going to cover? Well, basic questions. Why are we doing trek? When are we doing trek? Who gets to go and who is going to be involved? Where is it going to be? And then how is it going to really occur? And then at the end, again, we'll have time for some questions. So trek, nothing like starting a talk with kind of a definition from the dictionary. So a trek is, by definition, a long, arduous journey, especially one made on foot. And let me tell you, we did a lot of research this last fall trying to find a really good location for a trek. And I grew up out west where treks were commonly 6 days long, 30 or 40, maybe 50 miles long. And there's really not a location here in Iowa that fits that description that we could do. We looked out in Nebraska. We even made a special trip out to Martin's Cove in Wyoming. And none of those felt right. But we did have a place here in Iowa, even within our own stake boundaries, that's a little bit shorter, that we thought could really be the perfect location. We're really fortunate because we have a perfect location that is actually right on the handcart trail.
But the question still was, how are we going to get enough suffering? We need to suffer a little bit, right? Because it's trek.
Well, that seemed to be how it was when I was young.
Okay.
So, but I'm not convinced that we have to do all that suffering. So trek this year is going to be more than just this 3-day event that you've maybe seen pop up on a calendar. Contrary to what I grew up believing, trek doesn't have to be about suffering. Really, the trek is about the gathering. The gathering for those who made the original treks was really a physical gathering. They were gathering to the Salt Lake Valley. While we will be spending portions of 3 days on the trail pulling handcarts, the bulk of our gathering experience will come from pre-trek challenges, which the whole stake has been encouraged to participate in, and also in the celebration party at the end.
All right, so I want to tell you a story. This is going to be fun. So as we were thinking about trek and thinking about all the things we could do, this story kept coming to mind. And this is just one pioneer story among many, and you're going to learn a lot more before we're done. But listen to these things as we think about what trek could mean and why we're doing it the way we're doing it this year. John Daniel Malin, you see in that picture, and his wife, Pauline Combe, lived in Piedmont, Italy, and you can see a picture of it there. And they belonged to a group of people called the Waldensians, who had defied the Catholic Church for several centuries and had suffered a lot of persecution in response. You could say that they were reformers even before the Reformation. They kept a dairy, and they had an oil press, and they had 9 children. One of those children was Mary Catherine, and she was the oldest girl, and she remembered sitting by her grandpa on his deathbed and having her grandpa say to her, "The old may not, but the young will see the day when the gospel will be preached in its purity. And that day, Mary, remember me." She was 18 years old when her grandpa passed away. A few years later, now married and living somewhere else, she was out somewhere and she saw this Elder Woodward talking to a group of people, of which her older brother was a part. And so she went over and introduced herself and then introduced Elder Woodward to her father, who of course invited them over for dinner. And so the missionaries came to dinner and they were so excited about the gospel message that Catherine's older brother, also named John Daniel, applied to be, he petitioned to be baptized. And he was one of those where they chipped the ice away from the river so that they could baptize him. And their whole family joined the church. It didn't solve all their problems. Mary was having still a hard time. After her first child died, her husband abandoned her and she moved back home. And right before she was going to have another baby, Julia. And so she was there at home and she was thinking about this, and she writes this in her journal. She says, "Now I knew what my grandfather meant by 'in that day remember me.' Our faith in the Lord Jesus Christ of the New Testament and our longing for the truth has prepared our hearts and minds for the message of the restored gospel brought to us by the elders of Zion." They knew they were in the right spot, even though it was hard. And part of that spot was that they were going to now gather to Zion. And 2 years later, they were ready to go. Actually, before that, Catherine's older brother got called up in the army. And since his family was already getting ready to go to America, he decided that he would go alone by himself the first year, or that by himself. And so he did. He gave up his job as a teacher and he made the trip to Liverpool and then to New Orleans. And to pay his way, he drove an ox cart loaded with freight. It was hard. He didn't know very much English and he didn't know anybody there. A year later, his family would join them, but even that was kind of an adventure. They left their mountain home in March, think of the timeline here, and began a 7,500-mile leap of faith. They took a coach to Turin, and then a rail to Susa, and then another coach up a steep mountain pass. When they got to the top, they went into the hotel to get some refreshments. And while they were in there, a pickpocket robbed them of all their money. And so they were really worried. They hadn't even made it to the first checkpoint, and they were already without all their money. So they had to apply for perpetual immigration funds. And it was midnight before they got back in the coach, and they were so discouraged. They made it to France and then to the English Channel and now to Liverpool, where they waited for their chance to board. Catherine's husband showed back up again in Liverpool and joined the church when they were about to board the ship, which set sail in April. But that relationship still had troubles, and she was granted a divorce on board the ship. They made it to Philadelphia in May, and this is where they lose all their luggage, and they had to get more help. They camped for a couple months in Atchison, and by July they were on their way on what you would call the pioneer trek part. They'd have a lot of trekking before this, and by the end of October, 29th of October, they got their first glimpse of the Salt Lake Valley, and they were reunited with their son who had arrived the year before. And the joy of that meeting, especially it was said with his mother, whom they hadn't seen in a year or hadn't heard from in a year, was especially great. And that's one pioneer story. But as we were planning trek and thinking of all the things we could do, a three-day trip in which we're going to have a lot of fun didn't begin to cover the sacrifice and faith of our pioneer ancestors. And handcarts was one way they traveled, but we heard steamship, coach, and other things, and they did trains as fast as they could. So what we came up with for trek is that we're going to spend some time before trek, and you may have heard about this.
Yeah, so we've got the stake presidency has issued, and we've tried to roll out 3 pre-trek challenges. And fortunately, the math worked out fairly well. So there's really 2 numbers to remember. The first one is really the physical challenge. So there is a temple to temple virtual trek that has started, and people are still joining, so it is not too late, where we're essentially doing a virtual walk between the Nauvoo Temple and the Winter Quarters Temple. That happens to be 299 miles. If you started back on February 1, that'd be about 2 miles a day. We're about 3.5 miles a day on average now if you were to start from scratch. But So that's one of the challenges, and we'll take a look at the map in just a minute for that one. The second challenge is a Trek indexing group, where we're challenging everybody to, or the stake presidency has challenged everybody to index at least 299 names before we hold the actual handcart pulling portion of this event. That again is about 2 per day, and that's really pretty easy to do. And so there is an actual indexing group that you have to sign up to be part of, and we can monitor it from there. The third one is really what we call our temple ordinance mission, and it's really for those, to go and do temple ordinances for those who have passed along, or for those who are living, who do those for themselves. The goal is 299 amongst all the youth. That's average of 2 ordinances per person, which is basically a youth temple trip. Now we are collecting the results for temple ordinances from everybody, not just the youth. But the goal, as it's stated right here, is for the youth, just because it makes the numbers work out a little bit better. And you can see on a number of these slides, we've got a link down at the bottom to the website where we are tracking all of this information. In a few minutes, we'll send that out on the chat, but if you happen to be able to write that down or take a screenshot, that's where you can sign up for each of these, and where you can also report the results. For the first and third one, the Trek indexing group, the results are reported directly in the system. So a little bit more detail on that trek, temple to temple trek. So that 299 miles from the Nauvoo temple to the Winter Quarters temple, we're basically following the route that the Saints did when they were essentially kicked out of Nauvoo in 1846. Some people call that the South route, but it's the very first route. And you can see along the bottom of the map, the little white dots. Each of those dots is a historical point of interest, and there's usually quite a bit of research done about those locations. You can kind of see the names of them down below. And we have a large number of people that have made it certainly to the very first spot, which is Sugar Creek. But we've got several who are quite a ways along. Some of our youth that are in sports and get a lot of miles through their daily workouts have already made it halfway across. Now we are collecting, or basically collecting the miles, not just from the youth, but everybody in the stake is welcome to participate. And again, that website that was on the previous screen and it'll be on future screens is where you can submit your miles every Monday. We try to do every Monday. We did miss this last Monday. We do publish the results, and those who want to have their names displayed, you can look and see how far everybody has come. So pretty exciting. It's actually been quite a bit of fun. There's a lot of stories that we're hearing as people are going across this. From some of the adults, we've got one adult who had been in a wheelchair until just recently, and he's using this as a challenge to really basically learn to walk again. And his miles seem to increase just a little bit every week. Fascinating to see. We've got another sister that is battling cancer and has recently had surgery and is recovering, and it's fun to see her miles increase as they're submitted every week.
No, we've got primary kids who are lapping some of us.
and we've got primary kids who are in our top maybe 4 or 5 spots. So a lot of people involved, and it's been a lot of fun to see as that progresses.
And we have some fun with this. You're going to see later the water bottles you're going to get for going on trek. And if you pass off at these checkpoints and you submit them, then you're going to get stickers to go on those water bottles that will signify that you have made this trek.
The big white circle kind of in the middle is Des Moines. And where we will be doing our trek this year is over here with this white rectangle. So between Newton and Grinnell is where we'll be holding ours. And you'll notice that's right on one of the trails.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that here in just a minute.
Okay, so for our trek indexing challenge, this is my testimony of this one, you guys, is that we are living on the blessings of the previous generation. You are about to be blessed because of the efforts of people who are not even going on trek. We have this trek indexing group, and we're almost, I think we're over 50,000. names already indexed on it. So we are well on our way. And we have some rewards for being in and participating for this too. But this is a lot of fun. The Prophet has asked us to help with the gathering. Trek is a celebration of the gathering of Israel, and we are on this team. I put in one of our YouTube videos that it's like a relay, and you hand off the baton. The pioneers handed the baton of the gathering off to us, and we're supposed to be working hard on this. And this just seemed like the perfect opportunity to really show that we're good anchors for this relay. So sign up and do it. It's really fun.
Yeah. So yeah, sign up. So I'll admit I wasn't really into indexing until President Morales had challenged everybody to do 500 names last year, and I at the beginning had thought he's got to be
too scary.
Yeah, he's got to be nuts. That's a whole lot of names. I can't believe. And then we got into it, and actually 500 was number one, really easy, could do it really quick. Number two, it didn't take very long before we could start to see the blessings flowing in. So I have a strong testimony that indexing really does provide the blessings that have been promised to us.
And it will help us. We're working towards getting a temple in Iowa. Doing family temple history work will help.
Yep, absolutely.
And this is back to our temple ordinance quilt. You see here the picture Sister Miller from the Ankeny Ward has made and is in the process of making this beautiful quilt that we're going to have at our Pioneer Welcome Party. People who died without essential ordinances are really kind of stuck on the trail, and we want to help them. And so for every name you take to the temple and submit to on that website, we're going to put their name on this quilt. And we'll show that off at our Pioneer Party. And there are some really great stories coming in from people who have lovely family history story names. And there's even a spot, if you temple family names are hard to come by, we will take any names and put them on there, and your own if you go through for your own temple ordinances. It's gonna be a really lovely thing. Okay, so now we're gonna get to some of the nuts and bolts questions and things. And if you have more questions, put them in the chat and we'll do them at our question part at the end. Who gets to go? If you have youth in your ward, or you're a youth in your ward, and you will be turning 14 this year, anytime this year, you're encouraged to register, and we need you to do that pretty quick. We'll talk about that later because we want to make sure you get the right t-shirt size. I have had a lot of questions. Can I bring my friend? Yes, you can bring your friend. They just need to register too and fill out the permission forms. Graduating seniors, are you invited? Yes, you are. It's gonna be really fun. And the whole stake, if you've got younger youth and you're like, oh, I feel left out, you can do all those pre-trek goals, come to the party, and it's gonna be really fun. We have some other firesides and things coming up too. So that's who gets to go, plus our Ma's and Pa's. And I've had some youth leaders say, well, what about me? Can I be in too? And yes, you can. Let me know what you want to do. There's lots of spots to help. The trek takes a lot of help. And so if you want in, we'll find you a spot.
So when and where will the trek take place? Make sure you block your calendars, June 23rd, 24th, and 25th. So that's a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And where will it occur? I have a map over here. This is basically between Grinnell and Newton. But where we're going to start off at is at Jacob Crum Nature Preserve. It is a beautiful spot right along the trail that was used from, basically when
during our time period.
During the actual handcart time period. So handcarts came through here. We'll spend the bulk of the day there. The next day on June 24th, we will actually do kind of our longer day of trek, which is about 7.5 miles, where we will trek with the handcarts to Rock Creek State Park. We will camp there that evening, have some evening festivities. And then the next day, we will travel, and this is not quite Pioneer authentic because it is a long distance.
It is a long distance. We're gonna transport you.
We will transport to the Newton High School. And Newton High School is kind of just down the hill from Maytag Park, which is a gorgeous 100-year-old park in the middle of Newton. And there's a nice long bike trail that goes from the high school to the center of the park. And it's uphill. And so there will be the last half a mile or so, we'll be pulling the hand carts up that hill into a welcome ceremony there in the state, or there in the park. And basically it'll be a big pioneer celebration. We know that when Saints reached Salt Lake, there was a lot of celebrations going on to welcome them into the valley. And we're going to do that same kind of celebration there. The whole stake is invited. There's even people from the city who have expressed interest in coming. We may have some media people there as well. It's going to be a big deal. And, so those are the 3 days, kind of the big picture, when and where this event will take place. So now we'll transition to Sister Bullwinkle.
Okay. All right. I did want to share really quick that one of the main reasons I have a testimony of this gospel is because of our pioneers, and reading the stories and their faith have really built my testimony. So my hope for you is that as you prepare and participate, that will happen for you as well. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the arrival day, June 23rd. As you can see, at 9 a.m., the adult and youth leaders will arrive to set up at Jacob Crum. And then 11 to 11:30, the wards arrive. We'll have a sack lunch. And then at noon is the orientation, and we'll sort into families. So on that arrival day, you will receive welcome packets. We will provide you with the t-shirt, water bottles, journals, and bandanas, and every family will have their own color of bandana. And so we are working on ordering everything. We do have like a rough draft of what the t-shirts will look like, the water bottles. Okay, so here's the t-shirt logo that the youth committee had picked out for us. You can get your shirt size. If you register after the deadline, we will still provide you a shirt. You just might not be guaranteed your exact shirt size. And then the water bottle, it will have the Trust in the Lord logo. It might not be that exact one, but this is kind of what it will look like. And then the journals, we originally were going to do Called to Gather, but we actually did change it to Trust in the Lord for the Trek theme. So that will say Trust in the Lord. And so we're working on ordering these. So hopefully these are what it will look like. Departure day on Saturday. So we'll wake up and pack up camp, and we will get on buses. So you will not be having to trek that day. And we will arrive at Newton High School. And then we will pull the wagons in as we arrive at Maytag Park. And our stake will be there to welcome us all in, and we'll have lunch as a stake and have a pioneer celebration. Okay, and then the paperwork. One important thing here. So like it says, April 1st, please register by then to guarantee your shirt size. You still can register after, so feel free to do that. And even if you're not sure if you're going, we would like you to register just so we can have you on the list if you do decide to go, and a shirt size for you. And then the permission and medical release forms, I'm working on getting that in a digital form for you. And then we'll send those out. I'm not sure on the date when we'll send those out. You can do the printed form or the digital form, and then we would like those to be returned to us by June 1st. For anybody who is going. So
okay, we'll turn it over to Brother Billings for his slides.
So I wanted to talk just for a moment, and this part won't be very long because we'll talk a lot about this on Trek, but one of the reasons we go on Trek is because this is the very trail, the very area where our pioneer ancestors did trek. And what I want to say is I've been on 4 of these now in this particular area. And outside of the temple, this is one of the only places where I have felt people that have been there and were on this trek, that they're close to us, that they actually are there and present and understand what we're doing. And if you listen closely, and if you participate in Trek in the way I know you will, you'll feel that. You'll feel their presence. And one of the things that really moves me every time I go here is along the trail. I've had farmers tell me as I've trekked along this trail that they have wagon ruts and handcart ruts on their property. I've had farmers tell me that they found remnants of gravestones that they believe belong to the Mormon pioneers. And probably one of the most touching things is that along the trail is the grave site of the first youth, the first child that died on a handcart trek. The Ellsworth Company that we're celebrating, they were the first handcart company that traveled from Iowa City to Salt Lake City. And this was actually the first individual, Joe Welling, who was 19 months old at the time, who died on that particular company on this trek. And so we're going to stand by his graveside, and we're going to talk a lot about his life and his parents' life and what happened and why that was such a spiritual experience. And we'll feel it. We'll feel it when we're there. Every time I go to this site, I feel it. I feel the Spirit so strongly, and I feel the presence of those who still want us to remember what happened. And so that's one of the things I wanted to talk about just a little bit before we get started. We'll talk a lot more about that on Trek. All right, so one of the things people have asked a lot about is pioneer clothing. And what I can tell you is if you put handcart trek pioneer clothing and you do a Google search, you can do anything from get websites that'll encourage you to buy it. There'll be websites that give you patterns for sewing these dresses and these particular items. The skirt part too, the apron part. And you'll also have websites that will encourage you to look through your own stuff and be able to find some things that work. So all of those are answers. And what I wanted to do is really just point out a few things. And then really it's being in the spirit of this that's the most important. And so I'll point out just a couple things. Number one, if you look in the picture to the left, you'll see some of the sisters off to the left wearing bonnets. You'll also see some sisters wearing rimmed hats. You want to either be wearing a bonnet or a brimmed hat because the sun is pretty intense while you're out there trekking for an entire day. So that's probably one of the most important things. And even though the pioneers didn't have them, we also encourage you to wear sunglasses. That's for protection. So that's one of the rules that we kind of fudge on a little bit is we do ask you to wear sunglasses if that's what you choose to do. And it really does help. If you look this is my daughter actually off to the right when she went on trek, and she has the apron style dress. She actually made that dress. You can also buy those dresses, and you'll see a lot of other sisters on this trek and some of the other pictures that just simply wear a blouse with a skirt, a long skirt that's pioneer-like, and that's fine too. All those things are acceptable. The idea is the spirit of the pioneer clothing, and you can get about as sophisticated as you want. If you look at the boys, we encourage them to wear this kind of Western style shirt. We've also had people that have made the kind of blouse type shirt that the male pioneers, a lot of them wore, although male pioneers wore everything under the sun that you can imagine. I've seen lots of different experts talk about the different kind of clothing that got worn. It really kind of mattered where you came from as to what clothing you wore. You can see the suspenders there. That's a nice touch. The one thing I will tell you is for males, wearing jeans is not a good idea. Not only do they get really hot, but they chafe really quickly. And so I would encourage you to get a pair of cotton pants. A lot of people have those in the form of dress pants. If you don't have those, we have had people that have walked all the way in jeans. But I would suggest that that's not a great idea, especially if it gets really hot. All right, next slide. All right, you can just see some more examples here. You see a lot of different ways that people have dressed. I will tell you that some of the ladies started with a bonnet and they end up going to a brimmed hat. So either one is fine, and maybe you want to bring both for the different parts. We do suggest, and I'll show you a list of Pioneer or a list of things you need to bring, but we do suggest that you have a change of Pioneer clothing so that you bring 2 sets of Pioneer clothing. And because it's really nice to change, especially after that long day of trekking. And then for the final day, it's nice to have a fresher set of clothes. Next slide. And this you can see is our whole group. This was actually the very first Pioneer trek that I went on, and we ended up in Newton. This is right outside the Newton building, and you can see how a lot of them have dressed for the trek, and you see a wide variety of things. So if you have any more questions, feel free to email me or the Mitchells, and I would just encourage you to Google. It'll give you all kinds of suggestions if you just Google Pioneer Trek clothing. So, all right, the next thing that I wanted to talk about was a list of things to bring. So in the past, this list has been longer, but I will tell you after doing it 4 times, this really is the stuff that's most important. First of all, a 5-gallon food storage bucket. We ask you to put all these other items into that bucket. This bucket will be a really important part of trek. I should have put a picture on here about the bucket. I'm sorry, but these are the white food storage buckets that everybody knows about. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just ask some other people and they'll share that with you. There's a lot of these around. Any 5-gallon bucket is fine. You can buy them anywhere from Menards, and they're not very expensive, to Lowe's, but the food storage buckets work great. These will become not only our luggage, because we'll put them in our hand carts and carry them. So the entire family will put their buckets into the hand cart and take it with them in the hand cart. And so they also become our seats. It's really nice around camp. Instead of having to bring a whole bunch of chairs, we just simply carry our buckets around to the various, whether it's a fireside or the dance or sitting around the fire. It's really nice to have these buckets because they become a seat too. And so that's probably the most important item we'll bring. We are actually camping by units and then trekking as arranged families. And so you'll sleep with your unit. So it's up to your unit to provide the tent for all the youth and the youth leaders who will sleep in separate tents. We have a tent area for the boys and a tent area for the girls, and then the leaders sleep in their own tents in those areas to supervise. We also ask that you bring a sleeping bag, a pillow, and a flashlight. Then I already talked about Pioneer clothing and sunglasses. A must, and this is a must, is sunscreen. Put it on every day. We'll encourage you to put it on every day. The other thing that you will hear me constantly saying during trek is to hydrate. So we'll provide you with a water bottle, and we ask you to just constantly hydrate. We'll have water everywhere, including in the back of my pickup as we're trekking, and we will stop on a regular basis and fill up those water bottles and encourage you to drink in front of us. One of the biggest problems on trek is if somebody doesn't hydrate, and so we'll encourage that constantly. You'll get tired of hearing me say that. The other thing is a rain poncho. We will stay in camp even if it rains, and so that rain poncho is important. You can either just bring one of the plastic ones that are really cheap, or if you want to bring a little more sophisticated one, that's fine too. We need you to bring really good shoes, and this is another place where we break from Pioneer tradition. It's best to wear running shoes. I have some nice hiking shoes that I wear, and either hiking shoes or running shoes are really the way to go when we have that long day of walking. And bring plenty of socks. Bring a change of socks for each day, and even an extra pair in case they get wet or something like that, because wet socks are what cause some problems also. We ask you to bring your scriptures also, and that does all fit in the bucket, although if you have to put some of it in the cars that we're going to have there, that's fine too. Bring personal care items. We will have a chance to shower on day 2. We won't be able to shower on day 1 because there's no showers at Jacob Crum, but we will shower after our trek on day 2, and that'll be at Rock Creek State Park. There's plenty of shower facilities. So we ask you to bring your shampoo, your deodorant, your toothbrush, and your toothpaste, those kinds of things. We ask you to bring a towel also for that. And then any medication that you need to take, please put that in a Ziploc bag, and we'll have you let us know about that when you register, and then we'll make sure that gets taken along on trek in that Ziploc bag in your bucket so that you can take the medication that you need to. And then a jacket, if you look at the weather report, most often it's more hot than it is cold. Really, the heat is the thing that is the toughest part of trek. But if we look ahead at that week and it tends to be a really cold week, then you may want to bring a jacket too. All right, next slide. And then finally, what are we going to provide? We are going to provide plenty of food and treats. I have heard stories of treks where they didn't give them very much food, and I think that's a really bad idea. We're going to give you plenty of water, plenty of food, and there'll be plenty of treats. So you will not have to bring treats. I promise you, and if you went to our last dance, you know I deliver on this promise. There's going to be plenty of food and plenty of treats. And so Sister Watson is busy getting our menu together, and you'll be well fed for this trek. I'm going to say it again. We'll provide you the water bottle, and we need you to drink water. That is the single most important thing that we'll keep saying over and over again, is drinking water is really important, even on the first day when you first get there if it's hot. And then we'll provide you a trek t-shirt, the journal, and we'll also have first aid supplies there, so you won't need to bring those. We'll have those ready to go in case you need those, including if you need to put some tape on your feet or treat your feet or something like that. And then we will provide, if somebody on the trail just simply can't continue, we will have emergency transportation that'll take them to the next site.
Popped up here. You can look through those. So it looks like some of these have already been shared. So yeah, so the website has been shared. Feel free to take that and then put a bookmark on that. That way you can remember to report for each of the different challenges. So a question, if you're just getting started with the walking challenge now, is it okay if we log miles since the challenge began? Yes.
Yes, start at February 1st. If you've got a phone or a Fitbit or something that tracks those miles, just start from the date in February 1st so you can be up with everybody else. But feel free to jump in and say, you know, I didn't know about it. Here's my miles. We understand.
Yep. And others are already doing that. So no
and a
problem
follow-up question that I've had is, do I have to make it a special walk? Like, do I have to do special above and beyond what I'm already doing? That is up to you, but I am counting anything that you think is valuable. So if you get to school early and you're walking around the gym, that counts. If you want to count PE, that counts. Anything counts. If you want to ride your bicycle or rollerblade, I'm counting that. Just make sure you report it.
So it looks like a lot of the questions have already been addressed. What, guess everybody type any other questions you've got. I'm assuming we did not cover everything.
Or pop on and just ask. That's fine too.
Yeah. So what, as others are maybe thinking, what other questions have we been receiving that we might want to address if we haven't touched on them already?
Well, I had questions on if you could bring an instrument on trek, if you could bring your guitar, harmonica, or whatever.
And how did you respond to that one?
You have to carry it. It has to be somebody, nobody's carrying it for you.
Yeah.
And it has to be appropriate.
Yeah. So a question, should the bucket have a lid? I think it would be much easier to sit on a bucket with a lid than a bucket without a lid. So I would definitely get a lid. And you can do either the screw-on type. Those seem to be pretty strong, or you can just get the ones that you just kind of pound down. Either will work. Just make sure you can get whichever one you choose, make sure you can get it off. That way you can have access to all of your goods in the inside. And those are being worked on. We've had some special needs case with type 1 diabetes, and we're addressing those issues as they arise as well. So if you've got specific concerns, please reach out to one of us and we'll get that to Sister Watson, or reach out to Sister Watson directly and make sure that we can take care of your specific needs.
Oh, the hard question. Somebody asked it. Good job. Are the youth allowed to bring phones? Oh, what do we think?
No.
Make Brother Billings answer that one.
Oh, goodness.
You have the experience.
Yeah. So what we required on our last track, and we can further discuss this, but we required students, that's my principal voice coming out. We required trekkers to have their phones in their buckets. They weren't allowed to bring them out during the day. They were allowed to have them in the evening in case they wanted to talk with their parents or have an emergency contact. The one thing we really do ask you to do is not ruin the spirit of trek by playing music at night or or using your phones in other ways. They're there for emergency reasons, really, and allow you to be able to contact your parents. Does that sound about right? Keep it in the bucket.
That sounds like a plan to me.
Oh,
Oh, the slidey slope. We're gonna actually have a photographer or people who will be taking pictures for us on Trek, and this might be an opportunity if you've got someone who's skilled at this area who maybe wants to come to Trek to help take pictures. I'm taking photographer resumes at this time.
I know we have some graduating seniors that are debating, do I go or do I not go? And I'm thinking, well, would you go if you were the photographer or one of the photographers? That may encourage some of those who are kind of on the line, am I too old or not, to come with a special assignment.
What do you think, Brother Billings?
Well, what I saw on one Trek, and I really like this, we just created some photo ops. There were some times where we said, hey, here's the time, get out your phones, take the pictures that you want to take.
And this, assuming the recording of this worked, we will post it on the website, which will actually probably be a link to the YouTube channel. We did create a YouTube channel to house all of the various videos that we're putting together. So it'll be available for those who want to go back and look at it or have not had a chance to see it yet. So with that, I appreciate everybody jumping on. I'll turn it back to President Murdoch if you'd like to help us to close.